Most people think being smart means knowing more. More facts, more books, more degrees, more answers. But I've learned that's not what makes someone truly wise. It's not about how fast you speak or how much you remember. It's about how you see, how you listen, how you respond to what most people ignore. See, we live in a world that celebrates noise, quick opinions, loud certainty, fast reactions. But in the quiet, something else is growing. A way of being that 90% of people overlook. And I want to show you that path, not because I have all the answers, but because I've walked through confusion, frustration, and pressure. And I've found something worth sharing, not louder. Not faster, just different. Let me begin here. There was a time I believed I had to win every argument, prove my point, be right, be seen. You know that feeling, when someone says something that doesn't sit right with you, and your chest tightens, your thoughts sharpen, and before you know it, you're already firing back. I used to live there, fighting to be heard, fighting to be right, but something shifted. One day, someone said something that challenged me deeply, not because it was wrong, but because I realized I didn't understand them at all. I was just waiting for my turn to speak, so instead of defending, I asked, "What makes you feel that way?" And in that moment, something softened. Their shoulders dropped, their voice calmed, and a conversation began, a real one, not to win. Not to dominate, but to understand. That was the first shift. You don't argue to win, you ask to understand, because truth isn't a trophy, it's a light you uncover, together. And when someone feels safe enough to open up, you begin to see the world through eyes that aren't your own. That changes everything. But there's more. There was a night I couldn't sleep. I had failed something important. I had poured so much of myself into it. And it still wasn't enough. I stared at the ceiling, replay after replay, what I did wrong, what I should have said, why I wasn't enough. I spiraled. But then I remembered something simple. This is one moment, not my identity, not my destiny, just a dot in a much bigger picture. So I stepped back, and I asked, what created this? What system led me here? What pattern am I not seeing? And suddenly the failure wasn't personal. It was informational. That shift from self-blame to systems thinking saved me from drowning in moments. See, most people live in the moment. Not in a mindful, present way, but trapped in tiny storms, thinking each one is the whole sky. But when you zoom out, when you rise above the scene, you begin to see. The storm always passes, and the pattern is what matters. That's the second shift. You think in terms of systems, not just situations. Failure becomes data. Pain becomes a teacher, and setbacks become steps. And it gives you something precious, resilience. But let's go deeper. Have you ever felt paralyzed by what others think of you? A sideways glance, a silent judgment, the weight of what if I mess up? I have. I've stayed quiet when I should have spoken. I've overthought every word, every gesture, until my confidence collapsed under invisible pressure. But I learned something that changed my direction. Focus on what you can control, not what others expect, not what might go wrong, not what already happened. Just this: is this within my control? If yes, do something. If no, let it go. I used to waste energy worrying. Now I use it to build. And that has made me calm, not because life got easier, but because my mind got quieter. And in that quiet, I found clarity. There's a kind of strength that doesn't raise its voice, a kind of intelligence that doesn't rush to answer, a kind of power that comes not from saying the right thing, but from saying nothing at all. For a long time, I misunderstood silence. I thought silence was awkward, empty, weak, so I filled it with opinions, explanations, apologies. I thought the more I said, the more I'd be understood. The more I performed, the more I'd be accepted. But all I did was drain myself, trying to prove something I never had to prove, until one day I was sitting across from someone I deeply admired. They didn't say much, but every word felt like it mattered. They looked at me, listened without interrupting, waited longer than most would, and I realized they weren't afraid of the silence. In fact, they trusted it, and slowly I did too. Now I know. Silence is a superpower, because silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means something important is happening underneath. It gives space for truth to breathe. It lets others reveal who they really are. It slows down a fast world. And in that stillness, you begin to see what others miss. The person who speaks last, who reacts least, who listens most. That's the person holding the deepest kind of control. And not the kind that manipulates, but the kind that anchors. The kind that steadies a room even without saying a word. You don't need to fill every gap. Sometimes presence speaks louder than volume. And when you learn to be okay with the quiet, you begin to hear what really matters. But what happens when you're pushed, when someone says something cruel, when things fall apart and your instincts scream to react? I've been there too. There's this reflex inside us. A deep, ancient urge to defend, fight, flee, snap. Someone disrespects you, your jaw tightens. Plans fall apart, your chest clenches. A mistake is made, your voice rises before your mind catches up. And you say, I didn't mean that. But by then, it's too late. That's how most people live, reacting, defending, exploding. But reaction is a trap. It feels like power, but it gives it away. Because when you react, you're not choosing. You're just repeating, but the moment you pause, you take back the wheel. That's the next shift. You don't react, you observe, you breathe, you watch, you wait. And in that waiting, a different kind of wisdom grows. You begin to understand. You don't have to take everything personally. Not every comment deserves a response. Not every moment is a threat. You're not being weak, you're being free. Because true strength is not about how fast you strike, it's about how deeply you see. And when you slow down long enough to observe, you begin to notice patterns, why people do what they do, why you feel what you feel, what lies underneath the surface of every outburst, every silence, every mask. Observation creates insight, and insight always beats impulse. So where does that leave us in a world rushing to speak? You listen in a world chasing control. You surrender to what you can change in a world desperate to win. You simply seek to understand. This is how you stand out, not by shouting louder, but by thinking quieter, not by pushing harder, but by stepping back, asking deeper questions, and seeing further than most ever dare to look. Because here's the quiet truth. You don't need to be louder or faster or smarter than everyone. You just need to think differently, pause before reacting, ask before judging, act within your control, embrace the silence, zoom out when life gets messy. Most people won't. They'll keep reacting, rushing, taking everything personally, missing the bigger picture, but you won't. Because once you start building these habits, life begins to shift in small, powerful ways. You'll walk into rooms and feel calm when others feel chaos. You'll notice what others overlook. You'll hold space when others fill it with noise. You'll stop fighting every battle and start choosing peace. And slowly something will rise inside you. A quiet confidence, a grounded clarity, an awareness so strong it outsmarts almost everything. Awareness is a strange kind of gift. It doesn't make you richer. It doesn't make you louder. It doesn't even make life easier, but it changes everything, because once you start seeing clearly, you can't unsee. You start to recognize which emotions are truly yours, and which ones were passed down to you. You begin to feel the tension in a room before a word is spoken. You notice how someone's anger is actually their fear, how their silence is really a plea to be seen. And when life throws something unexpected, not if but when, you no longer crumble. You no longer scream, "Why me?" into the dark. Instead, you pause and you whisper, "What's this here to teach me?" That moment right there is when everything begins to change. Because you've stepped out of reaction, out of chaos, out of blame, and you've stepped into awareness. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to notice when your thoughts spiral, notice. When you want to react, pause. When you feel small, ask yourself, is this truth or just a story I've been telling myself for too long? That's the hidden work. That's the shift most people never make. Not because they can't, but because they never stop long enough to see it's even possible. But you have, you're here, you're listening not just to words, but to the voice underneath them, the quiet one, the steady one, the one you've ignored for years. And it's telling you, you don't have to chase approval anymore. You don't have to win every debate. You don't have to be everything for everyone. You just have to be aware. And the truth is, awareness isn't loud. It doesn't ask for applause. It doesn't show off. It simply walks into the room with its head held high and notices everything. The brokenness, the beauty, the hidden doors. It sees where others only guess. And that's what sets you apart, not how much you know, but how deeply you notice, not how fast you respond, but how wisely you choose, not how much noise you make, but how much presence you bring. So if you're still wondering how to outsmart 90% of people, it's not about being smarter. It's about being more awake. Start with this: don't argue to win, ask to understand. See systems, not just setbacks. Control what you can and let the rest fall away. Sit in silence. Observe before reacting. And above all, stay aware, because awareness changes everything. It makes you calm in chaos, gentle in anger, steady in the storm. It makes you the one others come to, not because you shout the loudest, but because you see the farthest. And one day, without trying, someone will look at you and wonder, how do they always seem so clear, so calm, so wise? And you'll smile softly, because you'll know it wasn't luck, it wasn't talent, it wasn't even intelligence. It was this: you learned to pause, you chose to see, you dared to think differently, and in a noisy world, that changes everything.